Earlier, I talked to Mr. Gary Locke. He was the U.S. ambassador to China from 2011 to 2014. When I asked him what he thinks is the biggest challenge ahead for bilateral relations, Locke said it is Trump's trade policies.
We are so economically intertwined. Millions of jobs in America and millions, tens of millions of jobs in China depend on trade with each other. China is a great market for our made-in-USA goods and services. There's a hunger and demand among the Chinese people for those high-quality, safe, pure American products. And so if we start talking about a trade war, if we start talking about slapping tariffs on Chinese products coming in the United States, China will do the same. And China does not have to buy those airplanes made by Boeing and made by American workers. They don't have to buy those GE locomotives for trains that are made by American workers, and the list goes on and on. They don't have to buy the farm products that are grown by our American farmers. And if they stop buying all these things made in the United States, that's going to result in huge job losses. So we need to be very, very careful about our trade relationship with China.
Let's turn to foreign policy. What happens to the Asia pivot, Obama's Asia pivot under Donald Trump? How do you see the chemistry changing in the region?
That's also a big question mark, and it's going to depend on how much time and attention and interest the Trump administration has with all of the Asia-Pacific region. So much of the trade, so much of the world economy will be coming out of the Asia-Pacific region. And the United States simply cannot ignore that area. And many of the countries in that area are very wary of relations with China. So they're going to want to see that the United States has an interest in the area, that the United States will have a presence in the area, and that we will ultimately be backing up and supporting the many countries and especially our allies in the Asia-Pacific region. After all, we're also very, very concerned about the actions of the North Korean government. So we need to make sure that we have a strong, united front between the United States, South Korea, and Japan.
Ambassador, I want to ask you about the phone call that got so much attention. That phone call with Taiwan leader Tsai Ing-wen. Is it possible that Trump could go away from the one China policy?
Well, I'm sure it was very planned, very calculated, and perhaps to send a message to China. And of course, the mainland leaders have given Mr. Trump a lot of slack and said, well, let's not just look at this in isolation. Of course, everything else that has happened since, in terms of his tweets, in terms of some of his appointments and his statements about China, I think are beginning to worry many, many people, both in the United States and around the world. Taiwan essentially claims to be the government of not just Taiwan, but also of the mainland. And of course, Beijing says that it's the government of not just the mainland, but also the government of Taiwan. You cannot recognize both entities that are competing governments for the same territory. You pick one or the other. Of course, we have strong economic relations with Taiwan, and Taiwan and the mainland have very, very deep relations as well. Economic, political, social, cultural, a lot more travel between the people and the businesses and the governments of the two entities. That is continuing, and so we need to ensure that the future of Taiwan is left up to the people of Taiwan and the mainland, and that we should not interfere in that.